Hey guys, it's Marisa here from Modern Baran. I wanted to talk you through the style of playing tones that you can expect to learn a little bit more of in some of my courses. Um, this is a more modern way of playing tones. There's so many different ways that people play the Baran and different techniques that people use. When I first started playing, I used kind of more standard and older style of moving your hand up and down the skin of the drum. I swapped to this newer style of playing tones when I was learning with Martin Neal, and I find it, personally for me, I find it way more effective, a lot less work, and it sounds a lot better. When I used to play the older style of moving my hand up and down the drum, I would find a lot whenever I was recording or playing live under a mic, you really hear this sound. And as you can see on the mic on the inside of my drum there, takes a lot more effort to move your hand up and down the drum all the time. You end up getting a little bit of a sore arm and tired pretty quickly. So with this style of playing, for the majority of the time, you're based around the top of the drum, and it's all about how much of your hand is on the skin, so how much the skin is able to vibrate and how much pressure you're putting on the skin of the drum. So for your low tone, your hand's going to be right at the top of the rim, and I just have a tiny little bit of my hand on. I only have part of my thumb and my first finger on the skin of the drum. And I like to have my low tone nice and low and ringing out. Everybody's different. Some people like the drums tuned higher, or they don't like a low tone that rings out. So as with a lot of things on your instrument, it's going to be down to personal preference. But for me, I like a nice low tone that rings out, so I don't have very much of my hand on the drum. It's going to sound like this. If you don't like your low tone to be as low and as ringing out as that, you just dampen the skin a little bit more, so you can put more of your fingers down. You can experiment with that a little bit, so you can see that sounds a lot more of a dead sound, and it's not ringing out anywhere near as much. And then the more you take your hand off the skin of the drum, the more that's going to ring out, okay? Middle tone, I'm just going to roll around to the heel of my hand, and I'm going to put pressure on the skin. You can see from the cameras on the other side over here how much pressure I am putting on the skin. For one middle tone, it doesn't matter too much. As long as it's higher than your low tone, it's going to be a tone somewhere in the mid-range. So you can see I'm always playing in the middle of the skin here with my stick, and my hand is kind of tucked in more towards my body, okay? So you don't want to have this too far out here, because then you're going to have a smaller area where you can actually play that tone. So I'm just going from the top of my drum for my low tone, rolling back to my middle tone here. Okay, that's higher than my low tone. Low tone, middle tone. There we go. Now for my high tone, I'm just going to roll over onto the top of my thumb, which is now kind of moved down a little bit. And I'm going to make a line with my thumb and my first finger. And with your high tone, you always have to hit above this line, okay? So I'm going to be up here in the top of the drum. And that's the only time I'm ever moving away from this middle part of the skin here. So I've gone above my hand with my stick hand. Okay, and I'm hitting above that line I've created. You can hear if I hit below that line, it's just going to be a dead sounding tone, okay? And the thing with the high tone is the more pressure you put and the higher up the drum you go, the higher your tone's going to be. So I can get a pretty decent high tone with my hand partway down the drum, not putting on loads of pressure. That sounds nice, okay? But the more pressure I put, the higher up the drum I go, the harder it's going to be to get into this small space here, but the better it's going to sound. Okay, so you can hear that's really high and poppy. So like I said before, it's all down to personal preference, exactly what you want your tones to sound like, okay? I'm going to play a rhythm here just with low and high tones. And if you watch my hand on the inside mic that's on the skin, you can see once you get used to this, you're staying all in the middle of the drum, and once you get used to the movements, you're not really rolling around the skin. It's more opening and closing your hand. So you're really just staying in one place, a lot less movement, and you're just getting used to opening and closing your hand. So here's a rhythm with just a low and high tone. If you watch my hand on the inside, you can see how that works when I put it all together, okay? okay? So you can see I'm basically just opening and closing my hand and putting the pressure on in the right places, okay? Now I'm gonna work a middle tone into that rhythm so you can see what that looks like as well. Okay, so you can see once you get going with all of that, it takes a little bit of work to pick it up or to change it if you've been playing your tones differently, but it can be a lot more precise and a lot less movement. So you're putting a lot of pressure on the skin for those middle tones and those high tones, but you're not moving around the drum quite as much. So personally, I find it a little bit easier. With the middle tone as well, you can play all around with the amount of pressure you're putting on the skin, and that will change a lot of the tones that you're doing as well, okay? So putting lots of pressure on and slowly taking it off. Okay, last thing while I have you here, for this style of playing, everything that's in between my tones, my accents, is just my hand flat on the skin and nice quiet beats in between all of my tones, okay? So if everything sounds really loud and noisy and you feel like your tones aren't sticking out as much, you need to work on your other hits too. Everything in between is just... So if we go back to that first rhythm I try, I'm not doing a low tone on every single tone where there isn't a high tone. If that makes sense, I only have a low tone on one beat, and then I'm doing hand flat in the back of the drum so the skin's dampened, and all of that in the middle is just nice and quiet, and then my high tone sticks out, and then I have everything nice and quiet in the middle again. So making all of your other strokes nice and quiet is going to help your tones really stand out where you want to accent them, okay? All right, so that is just a small introduction into how we play the tones on the Brad in this style of playing and how you can help your tones to sound better. I look forward to hearing what you guys think. Let me know in the comments.